All right, everybody, this one is nuclear. And I don't use that word lightly. A guy finds out 2 weeks before his wedding that his fiancée has been sleeping with his best man. His best man. The guy standing next to him at the altar. Instead of canceling the wedding, confronting her, or burning it all down, he does something way worse. He goes through with the whole thing. The ceremony, the reception, the dinner, the toasts. And when it's his turn to give the groom's speech, he stands up in front of 200 people and calmly reads the text messages between his bride and his best man. Out loud, into a microphone. The bride locked herself in the bathroom. The best man disappeared. 200 guests sat in absolute silence, and the groom walked out like he was leaving a meeting that ran long. This is the coldest revenge story I have ever covered. Let's go. I found out my fiancé was sleeping with my best man. 2 weeks before the wedding. I didn't cancel. I read their texts out loud during my groom's speech in front of 200 guests. I want to preface this by saying I'm not proud of what I did. Parts of it, yeah. But all of it? No. There were moments during the whole thing where I looked at myself from the outside and thought, this is insane. You're insane for doing this. And then I'd read the texts again and think, no, this is exactly what needs to happen. My name's Bryce. I'm 31. I work as an estimator for a commercial roofing company. Basically, I go to job sites, assess what needs to be done, write up the scope and the cost, and present it to the client. It's not glamorous, but it requires attention to detail and the ability to keep a straight face when someone is lying to you about their budget. That second skill turned out to be useful in my personal life too. More on that. My ex-fiancée, I'll call her Megan, and I were together for 4 years. We met through mutual friends at a 4th of July cookout. She was finishing her nursing certification. I'd just gotten promoted at work. Things clicked. Within a year, we'd moved in together. Within 2 years, I knew I wanted to marry her. I proposed on a trip to the coast. Nothing over the top, just a quiet beach, a sunset, and a ring I'd saved for over 8 months. She said yes. We cried. It was real. At least I thought it was. My best friend, I'll call him Dylan, had been my closest friend since high school. 14 years. We played baseball together. We were in each other's weddings plans since we were teenagers, making jokes about it at lunch tables. When I got engaged, Dylan was the first call I made after my parents. He said, "Brother, I've been waiting for this." I asked him to be my best man. He said he'd be honored. He even teared up a little on the phone. Looking back, I wonder if he was already sleeping with her at that point. The timeline suggests maybe. I try not to think about it too hard. I should tell you about our relationship before all this, because I think it matters. Megan and I were good together. Or at least I thought we were. We were the couple that other couples said goals about. We cooked dinner together every Sunday. We went on walks with our dog, a beagle named Porter, who is now exclusively mine. Megan didn't fight me on that. Porter always liked me more anyway. We had a routine that felt like peace. Tuesday nights were taco nights. Saturday mornings were farmers market mornings. We had this thing where every time one of us left for work, we'd say, "See you later, roommate," which was this dumb inside joke from when we first moved in together, and her mother kept calling me her roommate because she didn't want to acknowledge we were living together before marriage. We turned it into our thing. I said it to her the morning I found the texts. "See you later, roommate." She smiled. She had no idea I knew. The wedding was planned for October. Outdoor ceremony at a vineyard estate. Not a functioning vineyard, just a property with the aesthetic. Rolling hills, stone walls, big open tent for the reception. Megan had been planning it for almost a year. 200 guests. Catered dinner. Live band for the first 2 hours. DJ for the rest. Photographer, videographer, the whole production. We'd spent about $35,000 by the time everything went down. Most of it non-refundable. Everything was on track. Save the dates sent. RSVPs collected. Rehearsal dinner booked. Suits fitted. Megan's dress was apparently amazing. I never saw it before the day, obviously. Her bridesmaids were coordinated. My groomsmen were ready. Dylan had been working on his best man speech for weeks. He kept texting me hints about it. "Bro, this speech is going to make you cry." He was right about that part, just not in the way he intended. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a caught-in-the-act moment or a friend pulling me aside with gossip. It was a phone. Megan's phone. She'd left it on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. It buzzed. I glanced at it, not snooping, just reflexively looking at a buzzing phone the way everyone does. And the notification preview showed a message from D that said, "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." My first thought was spam. Seriously. My brain's first defense mechanism was, that's obviously spam. Then I looked closer and saw the contact name wasn't just D. It was D with a heart emoji next to it. Megan doesn't put heart emojis next to spam contacts. I picked up the phone. The screen was locked, but the notification was still visible. I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds. Then I put it down. Megan came out of the shower. She grabbed her phone, glanced at it, and her face did something subtle. Not panic, but a micro-adjustment. A tightening around the eyes. The kind of thing you'd only notice if you were looking for it. Which I was now. I didn't say anything. Not that day. Not the next day. I needed to know more. And I needed to know without her knowing I knew. Hold on. For the listeners, this is me jumping in, not Bryce. I need to point out what just happened. This man saw a text on his fiancée's phone from a contact saved as D with a heart emoji 2 weeks before his wedding. And his first move wasn't to blow up, wasn't to confront, wasn't to cry. His first move was to put the phone down and start gathering intelligence. That's not a broken man. That's a man who just switched from emotional mode to operational mode. He went from fiancé to field agent in about 30 seconds. And the fact that he noticed the micro-adjustment in her face? That's the attention to detail skill from his day job kicking in. This man evaluates roofing damage for a living. He knows how to spot a crack. And brother, this roof has a lot of cracks. The demolition is coming. But first, the inspection. That night, after Megan went to bed, I sat in the living room with Porter on the couch and tried to process what I'd seen. My mind was racing through every interaction, every timeline, every moment over the last few months that might have been a sign. The time Megan said she was going to the gym, but came home without having showered. The weekend she went to a girls' trip and was weirdly vague about who was there. The way she and Dylan had started texting more than usual, which I'd noticed but chalked up to wedding planning stuff, since he was the best man. The time all three of us were at a barbecue, and I caught them talking quietly by the cooler. They stopped when I walked over. I thought nothing of it. I think about it all the time now. Porter could tell something was wrong. He put his head on my lap and did that beagle thing where they look up at you with those big sad eyes. I scratched his ears and said, "You'd tell me if you knew, right, buddy?" He didn't answer, but he also didn't leave. Dogs are better than most people. Over the next 3 days, I became someone I didn't know I could be. Calm, methodical, quiet. I smiled when she talked about the wedding. I laughed when Dylan sent memes in our group chat. I went to work. I came home. I acted normal. But every chance I got, I was looking for confirmation. I got it on day 2. Megan left her laptop open on the dining table while she went to pick up a prescription. Her iMessages were synced. Same Apple ID on her phone and laptop. I opened the Messages app and found the conversation with D. It was Dylan. I knew before I scrolled. But seeing his name, his actual name, in a thread full of messages that started with flirtation and escalated into things I can't repeat here, that's when the floor dropped out. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It was fact. They'd been involved for at least 4 months. The messages went back to June. We were getting married in October. She'd been sleeping with my best man for nearly half our engagement. The messages were detailed, specific. They referenced times and places. His apartment on Tuesdays and Thursdays when Megan told me she had late shifts. A weekend I went on a work trip and she said she was staying in. They even joked about the wedding. In one message, and this one still makes my hands shake when I think about it, Megan wrote, 2 more weeks of playing pretend. Then we figure it out. Dylan responded, worth the wait. 2 more weeks of playing pretend. That's what our wedding was to them. Pretend. A performance. And I was the audience. I took screenshots. Every message. Every photo. Every timestamp. I sent them to a new email address I created specifically for this purpose, then deleted the sent items from her laptop's email. She never knew. Quick aside, I know some people are going to say I violated her privacy by reading her messages. And yeah, I did. But she was about to stand in front of 200 people and vow to be faithful to me while actively sleeping with someone else. I think the privacy argument loses some weight in that context. Pause. I need everyone to take a breath, because what I'm about to describe is going to require emotional preparation. This man now has screenshots of 4 months of messages between his fiancée and his best man, including a message where they called his wedding playing pretend. And instead of burning the house down, he's calm. He created a separate email account for the evidence. He deleted the sent items. He covered his tracks. Bryce is operating at a level of composure that would make a surgeon jealous. This isn't grief. This is engineering. He's building something. And whatever he's building, it involves 200 wedding guests, a microphone, and a groom's speech that Dylan is definitely not going to enjoy. I'm shaking right now, and I already know what's coming. I spent the next 11 days living a double life. On the surface, I was an excited groom, smiling at the rehearsal dinner, joking with Dylan about bachelor party memories, complimenting Megan's choices on centerpieces and seating arrangements, hugging her mother and telling her I'd take good care of her daughter. Every interaction was a performance, and I was performing the role of a lifetime. Underneath, I was planning. There was one moment during those 11 days that almost broke my composure. We were having dinner, Wednesday night, 9 days before the wedding. Megan was talking about the seating chart. She said, "I put Dylan's table near the front so he's close during the speeches." I took a bite of food and said, "That makes sense." She said, "He's been working so hard on that speech. He says it's going to be emotional." I said, "I bet." She reached across the table and held my hand and said, "I'm so glad you two are friends. Having your best friend as your best man makes it feel more real." I looked at her hand on mine, her engagement ring catching the kitchen light, the hand that had been on someone else the night before, based on the message timestamps I'd memorized. And I said, "Yeah, it does feel real." That was the hardest acting I've ever done. Harder than the wedding day, harder than the speech, because in that moment, she was looking at me with what I think she genuinely believed was love. And maybe it was. Maybe she did love me. But love doesn't look like, "Your place Thursday, he's got a work dinner." That's not love. That's logistics. And logistics is literally my job, so I know the difference. I called a family attorney 5 days before the wedding. Not a divorce attorney, we weren't married yet, but someone who could advise me on the financial implications of the situation. The $35,000 we'd spent was mostly gone. Deposits, vendor payments, dress alterations, non-refundable. The attorney said, "If you cancel the wedding, you eat those costs and she owes you nothing. If you go through with it and then pursue annulment, the legal standing depends on the circumstances. Fraud in the inducement, meaning she entered the marriage under false pretenses, is grounds for annulment in your state." Fraud in the inducement. That phrase became my compass. If I could prove she entered the marriage while actively maintaining a relationship with someone else, the marriage could be annulled. Not divorced, annulled. Like it never happened. Like the pretend wedding was officially recognized as pretend. I also did something that I go back and forth on morally. I reached out to 3 of Megan's closest friends, not to confront them, but to casually ask in separate conversations if they knew anything about Megan and Dylan. 2 of them reacted with genuine shock. They didn't know. The third, a woman named Kayla, got very quiet and then said, "Bryce, I think you need to talk to Megan about this," which told me everything. Kayla knew. She'd known. And she hadn't told me. I've since cut Kayla out. Not dramatically. I just stopped responding to her messages. She knows why. The rehearsal dinner was Friday night, 2 days before. Megan was radiant. Dylan was charming. They both performed beautifully. I watched them interact from across the room. Careful not to stand too close. Careful not to touch. Careful not to look at each other for too long. They'd gotten good at the deception. Practiced, professional. 2 actors who knew their roles. At one point during the rehearsal dinner, Dylan pulled me aside and said, "Bro, I just want to say, I'm honored to stand next to you on Sunday. You and Megan are the real deal." I looked him in the eyes, 14 years of friendship behind those eyes, and I said, "Thanks, Dylan. It means everything." And for 1 second, one tiny second, I saw something flicker behind his expression. Not guilt exactly, more like the shadow of guilt. The knowledge that guilt should be there, even if the actual guilt hasn't arrived yet. I think sociopaths have that flicker sometimes. The awareness that they should feel something, even when they don't. The night before the wedding, I barely slept. Not from nerves about the ceremony. from the anticipation of what I was about to do. I ran through the speech in my head about 15 times. I knew which messages I'd read. I knew the order. I knew exactly how long it would take. I even timed it, under 2 minutes for the reveal portion. Quick, clean, devastating, like pulling off a bandage, a $35,000 bandage. The morning of the wedding was surreal. I woke up at 5 a.m. in the hotel room. We'd booked separate rooms for the night before. Tradition. I showered, I shaved, I put on my suit. I looked in the mirror and thought, you're about to do something insane. And then I thought, yeah, but it's going to be honest. And that's more than she's been. I had a folder in my inside jacket pocket, printed screenshots. Not all of them, just the highlights. The playing pretend exchange. A few of the more explicit scheduling messages. The ones with Dylan's name clearly visible. I'd formatted them neatly. Times New Roman. 12-point font. Easy to read out loud. The ceremony happened. I'm not going to linger on it because honestly, it's the part I remember least. I said my vows. She said hers. I looked into her eyes and she looked into mine. And for a brief, terrible moment, I almost believed her. Almost. Then I remembered 2 more weeks of playing pretend, and the moment passed. After the ceremony, there was a cocktail hour, then dinner, then toasts. The order was maid of honor speech, best man speech, then the groom's speech. Standard. The maid of honor, Megan's college friend, Paige, gave a sweet speech about friendship and growing up and finding your person. Nothing remarkable. People clapped. Then Dylan stood up. Wait. Dylan is about to give a best man speech about the groom, whose fiancée he has been sleeping with for 4 months. This man is going to stand up in front of 200 people, hold a microphone, and talk about brotherhood and loyalty and love while the groom sits next to him with a folder of receipts in his jacket pocket. This is the most tension-filled moment in the history of wedding receptions. Every movie you've ever seen with a ticking bomb at the party scene? This is that scene. Except the bomb isn't under the table. It's in Bryce's breast pocket. In Times New Roman. 12-point font. I need a minute. I genuinely need a minute. Dylan's speech was 7 minutes long. I know because I timed it on my watch. 7 minutes of stories about our friendship. How we met in 9th grade. The baseball road trips. The time we got lost on a hiking trail and had to call his mom. How I was the most loyal person he'd ever known. He used that word. Loyal. He looked at me when he said it, and I looked right back. The room laughed at his jokes. Megan wiped her eyes. People raised their glasses. Then it was my turn. I stood up. The room quieted. 200 faces looking at me. My parents in the front row. Megan's parents next to them. Megan beside me, glowing in her dress, hand on my arm. I thanked everyone for coming. I thanked the vendors, the venue, the parents. I said something about how you spend your whole life looking for the right person. Standard stuff. People were smiling. Megan was beaming. Then I said, before I finish, I want to share something. A few words that really stuck with me as I was preparing for today. Words that perfectly capture what this day means. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the folder, opened it, and I read. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. Sent from Megan to Dylan, September 28th. The room didn't react at first. People thought it was part of the speech, some kind of joke or metaphor. 2 more weeks of playing pretend. Then we figure it out. Sent from Megan to Dylan, October 3rd. That's when it landed. The silence changed. It went from polite attention silence to something as very wrong silence. Megan's hand dropped from my arm. I read 2 more, the scheduling ones. Your place Thursday? He's got a work dinner. And Dylan's response, I'll leave the door unlocked. I looked up from the paper. Megan's face was white. Not embarrassed white, beyond that. The white of someone whose entire world just collapsed in public. Dylan was frozen in his chair. His drink was still in his hand, halfway to his mouth, suspended there like a screenshot of his own guilt. I folded the papers, put them back in my pocket, and I said to the room, I found these on her phone 2 weeks ago. I went through with today so that I could look both of them in the eye and let them know, in front of everyone who matters, exactly what kind of people they are. I wish the 2 of you the best. You deserve each other. The room was frozen. 200 people. Not a sound, not a cough, not a glass clinking. Just silence and the distant sound of the band warming up in the next room, completely unaware of what had just happened. I looked at my parents. My mom had her hand over her mouth. My dad was looking at me with an expression I can only describe as devastating pride. He gave me the smallest nod I've ever seen, the kind of nod that says everything without saying anything. I set the microphone down on the table. I walked past Megan without looking at her. I walked past Dylan without looking at him. I walked out of the tent, through the vineyard property, to my car, which I'd pre-positioned near the exit earlier that day because I'd planned this walk. And I drove away. I turned on the radio. Some random song was playing. I don't even remember what it was. Something upbeat and completely inappropriate for the moment. I almost laughed. I drove to my buddy Jake's apartment. He wasn't there. He was still at the wedding dealing with the aftermath. I sat in his driveway and called my mom. She answered on the first ring, crying. I said, "I'm okay, Mom." She said, "I know you are. I'm crying because I'm proud." We stayed on the phone for about 10 minutes. Neither of us said much. Sometimes the phone call isn't about words. It's just about knowing someone's on the other end. I didn't look in the rearview mirror during that drive. Not once. I didn't need to. Everything behind me was already gone. My groomsman Jake told me later what happened after I left. Megan ran to the bathroom and locked herself in. Didn't come out for over an hour. Her mother was screaming. Her father was trying to find Dylan, who had already disappeared, left through a side exit before anyone could confront him. The guest sat in stunned silence for about 5 minutes before people started leaving. The band didn't play. The cake wasn't cut. The photographer packed up. It was over in 15 minutes. Final update. The annulment went through in January. Fraud in the inducement. My attorney handled everything. Megan didn't contest it. Her own attorney apparently advised her that contesting would require a hearing where the messages would become part of the public record, and she didn't want that. So she signed. It was over in 60 days. I haven't spoken to Dylan since. He tried to call me once about a week after the wedding. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that said, "Bryce, I know I messed up. Can we talk?" I deleted it. 14 years of friendship, and his first instinct was to call it messing up. Like he bumped into me at a grocery store. He didn't mess up. He made a choice. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, for 4 months. That's not a mistake. That's a schedule. Megan and I communicated only through attorneys after the wedding. She sent me one text, about a month after. It said, "I never meant to hurt you." I didn't respond. I wanted to write back, "Then why did you?" But I didn't. Some questions don't need answers. They just need to be asked in your head and then let go. My parents were incredible through all of it. My mom cried when I told her the full story, which I didn't do until the week after. She said, "You should have told us sooner." I said, "I needed to handle it my way." My dad just said, "I'm proud of you, son." And then he went quiet for about a minute and added, "Your grandfather would have done the same thing. Exactly the same thing." I don't know if that's true, but it felt good to hear. I want to mention one thing about the aftermath that I didn't expect. About 3 weeks after the wedding, I started getting messages from people who were there. Not friends, acquaintances, co-workers of Megan's family, people I barely knew. One woman sent me a message that said, "I was at table 12. I've been married for 22 years, and what you did took more courage than anything I've ever seen." A guy who was apparently Dylan's college friend messaged me and said, "I had no idea. I feel sick. I'm sorry." Megan's old boss, who I'd met once at a holiday party, sent me a card, an actual physical card. It said, "Integrity is doing the right thing even when it's the hardest thing. You have integrity." I keep that card in my desk drawer. Some days I need to read it. The strangest message came from the photographer. He'd packed up before the speech happened, but his second shooter, the person who films video, had been recording the toasts as part of the standard package. He reached out to ask what I wanted done with the footage. I told him to delete it. He said, "Are you sure? It's powerful." I said, "Delete it. The people who were there will remember, and the people who weren't there don't need to see it." He deleted it. At least I hope he did. I guess I'll find out if it ever shows up on the internet. If you're reading this and you have wedding reception footage from a vineyard estate in October featuring a very awkward groom's speech, Please don't post it. Some moments deserve to stay in the room. The financial stuff worked out as well as it could. Of the $35,000 we'd spent, I recovered about $9,000 through the annulment proceedings. Megan agreed to reimburse a portion of the shared expenses as part of the settlement. The rest was gone. $35,000 for a 17-minute reception and a lesson I'll never forget. My mom checks on me a lot, sometimes too much, honestly. She came over last Saturday with a casserole and a bag of dog treats for Porter. She sat on my couch and said, "Are you eating?" I said, "Mom, I'm 31 years old. Yes, I'm eating." She said, "You look thin." I said, "I've always been this thin." She said, "You look thinner." We had the casserole for dinner. It was good. She's a good cook. She left around 8, and at the door she hugged me and said, "You're going to be fine, Bryce." I know I am, but it's nice to hear from someone who's been on your team since before you could walk. I moved into a new apartment, smaller, quieter, closer to work. I kept the furniture from the old place because it was mostly mine anyway. The couch, the dining table, the bed we shared. Actually, I threw the bed away. Bought a new one. Some things you don't keep. Jake, my groomsman, the one who told me what happened after I left, has been my rock. He checks in every week. We watch games together. He never brings up the wedding unless I do first. He's the kind of friend Dylan pretended to be, but never actually was. Porter adjusted to the new place faster than I did. He found his spot within an hour, the corner of the couch by the window where the afternoon sun hits. He sits there every day around 3 p.m. and watches people walk by. Sometimes he growls at a particularly suspicious-looking squirrel. We're healing, me and Porter, in our own time, on our own couch, without any playing pretend. I've been on 2 dates since. Nothing serious. I'm not ready. My buddy Jake says I should get back out there, but I'm not in a rush. I'm 31. I've got time. And I've got Porter. And I've got a couch with a good window. And I've got a closet with a suit in it that I'll probably never wear again, but that I'll keep forever, because it reminds me that I'm the kind of man who tells the truth, even when the truth costs $35,000 and a wedding reception. And honestly, after what I went through, I'd rather be alone and at peace than in a relationship and playing pretend. Do I regret the speech? No. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. Some people don't deserve a private conversation. Some people deserve a public record. I heard through mutual friends that Dylan and Megan tried dating after everything fell apart. It lasted about 6 weeks. Apparently, when the secrecy and the danger were gone, there was nothing left. Who could have predicted that a relationship built entirely on deception wouldn't survive in the open? Shocking. Truly shocking. Kayla, the friend who knew and didn't tell me, reached out about 2 months ago. She sent me a long message apologizing for not saying anything. She said she'd been torn and didn't want to get involved. I read the message. I didn't respond. Getting involved was never her call to make. Telling the truth was, and she chose not to. That tells me everything I need to know about where I stand with her. The only thing I regret is not noticing sooner. 4 months. She hid it for 4 months. And I was too busy estimating roofing costs and planning a wedding to see what was happening under my own roof. Would you have done the speech? Or canceled the wedding? I've gotten mixed reactions from people I've told. Some say it was too far. Some say it wasn't far enough. I think it was exactly what it needed to be. 200 witnesses. 1 folder. No regrets. Anyway, I still have the suit. Haven't worn it since. Probably never will, but I keep it in the closet. Not as a reminder of her. As a reminder of me. Of the version of myself that stood up, spoke the truth, and walked out. I like that version. He's got good posture and even better timing. Oh, one random thing. Porter, my beagle, has learned a new trick since all of this. He can now open the cabinet under the kitchen sink, which is where I keep his treats. I didn't teach him this. He figured it out on his own, probably Tuesday or Wednesday last week, based on when the treats started disappearing faster. Anyway, I can't even be mad. The dog who watched me plan the most dramatic moment of my life has earned his cabinet privileges. Smart boy, loyal boy, better than most humans I know. Yo, that's not a mistake. That's a schedule. That line right there, that's the line of the year. Bryce didn't just expose a cheater. He retired the entire concept of, it just happened. It didn't just happen, Megan. You had a recurring calendar event. Dylan left his door unlocked on a regular basis. These two were running a side relationship with the operational efficiency of a small business. And Bryce dismantled it with a folder and a microphone in front of everyone they know. The annulment for fraud in the inducement is the legal cherry on top. The marriage was pretend. And now, officially, it never happened. Bryce walked in as a groom and walked out as a legend. The suit stays in the closet. The story lives forever. Look, I know some people think the speech was too far, that he should have just canceled and walked away quietly, and maybe that's the mature thing to do. But here's my take. Megan and Dylan had 4 months to be honest. 4 months to come clean. 4 months to cancel the wedding themselves and save everyone the pain. They chose to go through with it. They chose to stand in front of 200 people and pretend. So Bryce chose to stand in front of those same 200 people and stop pretending. That's not revenge. That's just honesty with a microphone. Drop a comment, speech, or cancellation. What would you have done? Subscribe, and I'll see you next time.